Good morning and welcome to another episode of 10 Minutes with TmFal. It's been a while. I'm back now and we're going to be doing a couple more episodes. This episode is called Family History, Our History. Let's talk about it. So, we have all gone to the doctor, and sometimes it seems like doctors are intrusive when they ask about your family history. So, we ask about why you're here, what's brought you here. When we get into your social history, family history, past medical history, medications, allergies, there's an order in which we do things, and we ask about family history. But what we know, and what I've increasingly seen, is that a lot of us, especially Africans and some other cultures, are hesitant to share information around our family history, not just with healthcare professionals, but also with our families. And that is really important. As a mom of two young women, it's important to me that we share family history around health issues because that is a key part of our overall health and wellness. So we do share successes. We're very, as a culture and as humans, very great at sharing successes. Really don't like to talk about failures or things that didn't work out well. And when we do that, we set up our children and others to think that failure is never an option. Nobody struggles. Everyone does well. We don't talk about a lot of things, especially around health. When people die in our culture, a lot of times it's the obituary reads brief illness. Everyone died of a brief illness. We never talk about cancer. We don't talk about mental health issues. We don't talk about other things, heart disease. We just say brief illness. And when we do that, we are actually unconsciously and unknowingly could be harming the next generation. We'll talk about why that is because some things are inherited. They're dominant, they're recessive, autosomal dominant or recessive. Some things are sex linked, some things are more common in families. So the importance of a family history is important. Why do we have such issues around discussing family history with our children? Sometimes it's from stigma that's associated with cancer, with mental health illnesses, which in years and generations past may have been used to ostracize families. And a lot of that had to do with there were no treatments available for certain things. And so it was a way that families would avoid, marrying into certain families. But technology and medicine and healthcare has evolved that if we don't talk about a problem doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means we're actually not availing ourselves the opportunity to that. Some of it has to do with shame or our pride, our sense of pride in only sharing successes and how would others think about us. But we have to think about this because we will be hurting ourselves when we don't share that history. And sometimes I think a big part of that is ignorance around the fact that what we don't share with our family around family history will harm because when doctors and nurses in the hospital ask about family history, there are certain conditions, if we know exist in your family history, first and second generation relatives, that require earlier screening. Things like colon cancer, breast cancer screening, things like that, where if there's a family history at a certain age, prompts earlier screening for that diagnosis. Things like we talked about mental health issues that may run in families that may predispose people at certain times. Things like diabetes, which if we know there's a strong family history in pregnancy, we may screen earlier for gestational diabetes. There are tons of examples of knowing a family history that's really important. Heart disease, sudden cardiac death. Those are things that if we know the age at which somebody in a family had a heart attack or heart condition, it affects how we look at the risk of the person in front of us. So if a family member, a young person is going to the doctor and they have no idea about their family history on first degree relatives, cousins, parents, and everyone just has a brief illness or diagnosis that is hidden, it really harms how much healthcare providers can figure that family history into their overall health. So We don't talk about a lot of things because of stigma, shame, a sense of pride, ignorance, because we don't know that it's really important. But it is important that we talk to our young adults and children as they get to an age where they understand about family history of certain things. And as young adults are leaving home to go to college or outside of the home for whatever careers and job opportunities they have, that they understand their family history, that when there is a diagnosis that is important, malignancy, heart disease, mental health, that it is shared in a way that they know that when they are asked that question. If you have a family member who had colon cancer at an earlier age, then the screening sometimes starts 10 years earlier. Breast cancer. Sometimes we don't even think it's important, but being able to share, it's not about being, sharing every single detail, but having your young adults know about family history is important so that when they are asked, the answer is not, I don't know, or I don't think so, or no, when the answer could be a yes, and that impacts their lives. So why is it important? Three reasons. One, knowing a family history of certain conditions will change the screening guidelines. It may change how often a person is screened for a condition. It may change the age at which the screening is started, usually earlier, and it may change what is put in place for monitoring for that condition. It may also be a trigger to order a set of diagnostics if we knew there was a family history of a condition. So it's important because it changes the healthcare of the person involved. Second reason it's important to talk about family history, opens up conversations to other things. If you're talking about a family history of breast cancer or colon cancer or any kind of illness or early diabetes in the family or heart disease or cardiac death, it opens up a conversation that goes into other parts of health and prevention and healthcare and all these other things. So it really is a conversation that starts off talking about health and family history around health conditions, but it really opens up conversations to other parts of our lives that are really important. The last thing or third thing is it becomes a tradition. It becomes a tradition to discuss these things because it leads to overall wellness of the families. As generations go by, it becomes important to talk about family history, good, bad, ugly, to talk about health and health conditions within the family. And just as you talk about health conditions in the family, you talk about other things in the family, successes and celebrations, but you also talk about challenges, which makes everyone stronger. So, again, as we're rounding up 10 minutes with TmFal, as a doctor, we do ask about family history. It's part of our history taking, and it is important. So, I implore people to talk to your young adults and children when they're the age to understand things about the importance of family history so that when they start to seek healthcare, they embrace everything and provide information that will be beneficial to those taking care of them. Let's avoid the stigma and the shame of discussing health conditions. Cancer should have no stigma. We should talk about it and know that when we do that, one, we're benefiting the health of those young adults as they head out into the world by understanding their family history. Two, when we have these discussions around family history, it opens up conversations to other aspects of our family and other social and things that we discuss. And finally, it becomes a tradition to be able to talk about our family history and family health so that those things become routine and there is not an awkwardness or avoidance when those things happen. So let's stop putting everything as a brief illness and talk about diagnosis, which leads us to talk about prevention and health of the next generation. This has been 10 Minutes with TmFal. I hope you enjoyed this episode.